A track that holds historic prestige in stock car racing lives on forever virtually, but becomes a brand new destination for a brand new inaugural season. Where tonight we welcome you to the 8th race in the inaugural 4-wide racing ARCA Series season, live from the virtual Myrtle Beach Speedway, and coverage right here on the KBueno Racing Network. So happy to have you along for our coverage as we continue on through this scintillating championship. We're alongside Francisco Bacallao over the broadcast booth tonight. My name is Kenneth Bueno. Francisco, this track, I think, as most notable to stock car racing fans, it has held many prestigious events. A lot of real-time race car drivers have taken their cars across this track. Unfortunately, not a track that continues to exist today, but one that holds that prestige, holds that sort of importance in stock car racing. And tonight we get to see the ARCA cars in the 4-wide series take on this very notable track.
Yeah, happy to be up here in the booth, Kenneth. And Myrtle Beach is definitely one of the more known racetracks for short track racing in this country. And, you know, Dale Jr. is one of the more prominent drivers that enjoys this racetrack. He talks about it all the time, occasionally on his podcast. So it's a very drivers like racetrack, you know, like there's sometimes racetracks that drivers just are keen to like or keen on just getting the hang of it around here. And Myrtle Beach being just over a little bit over half a mile in length, it's a short track and it's very tight. You see the front stretch is actually a little bit curved, so that's going to play an interesting role here throughout the night because you have to kind of have the wheel turning, and the braking into turn one is kind of interesting. You don't want to put too much brake. You can wheel hop the car very easily and you won't even feel it, and around it'll go. And there's some interesting curbs there. It's not even a solid curb. It's like those little rocks that you put around sometimes in a driveway that separate the apron of the racetrack from the actual racing surface. Right there, you see them right here. You see those little rocks right there that separate the apron from the racetrack. So you don't want to hit those. Those will launch you up the racetrack. We might have to look out for somebody who might hit those tonight. And it's going to be interesting. This is the first time I've ever seen a race here, so I don't know what to expect.
And this track, one of the more newer additions to the 4-wide racing calendar. Of course, in the ARCA Racing Series, we're going to see 5 flags later on this season as a new addition for short track racing. So a lot to be interested in as we move forward. But to get a little more information about this very historic Myrtle Beach Speedway, we'll take a look overhead in our KBueno track map with images provided by Google Earth. There you can get a nice view of the track. This is before the demolition back in 2020. But in the sim, it lives on forever. This very tight 0.538 mile course, about 0.866 kilometers with 13 degrees of banking in either turn, and about 4 degrees on the straightaways, on the front straightaway, and 3 degrees on the back straightaway. But nonetheless, a very rough track, a track that demands a lot, Francisco, out of you as a driver. Not only in real life, like we've seen many drivers take on with super late models and other race cars across the world, but also think about the demandation that the drivers have to face in the sim as well, because obviously laser scan this track is, so you're going to have a lot of bumps, you're going to have a lot of interesting parts of the track that you have to note with these cars that don't have that much downforce. It means that we're going to have 2 straight weeks of straight driving skill taking place from Darlington last week to Myrtle Beach tonight.
It is not easy to put a lot of laps into a short track. Just this past week, NIS at Richmond, I participated in the Sunday night event, 200 laps, and that was not easy. It challenges your mental toughness, your ability to stay focused, and these ARCA cars are not exactly the easiest cars to drive. So it's going to be very tough to keep this car planted throughout the whole night. And we know that there's going to be caution flags throughout the evening. It being a short track, it's bound to have a lot of contact, and maybe some of that contact results in some spins. So we're going to have a couple of incidents here tonight, and staying focused throughout those yellows, staying poised, keeping your car clean. Those things will be prominent. Everybody has a fast repair. You want to either not have to use it or use it as late as possible. The last thing you want to do is be involved in a lap 1 incident and having to use that fast repair.
Going to be a lot of strategy behind the wheel, and of course to top the boxes over the course of this 200 lap feature race for the 4Wide Racing ARCA Series. Drivers are now lined up on pit road right behind the iRacing official pace car, so that means it is our time to take a look at your starting grid, see exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be starting here tonight from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Charlie Harcum, one of the rookie drivers to join this series, will line it up on pole with a 19.588, the best of everyone in qualifying. He'll be alongside Jacob Denson in the 45, who'll be right alongside in second for your first row in this race.
Austin Reedy, familiar face, he lines up the second row of the grid with a third place starting position. And alongside him, Curtis Kelly, he's made a name for himself in this ARCA Series. He's going to look to have a good run here tonight. He starts in the top 5.
Back to row number 3, you'll find the 13 of Craig Launslugger, driver who did very well at Darlington, not able to get the win, but at a driver's skill track, he surely knows how to get it done. He'll start tonight from the edge of the top 5, and Jesse Prees in the 12 will line up alongside of him in 6.
Tony Kivitt, he's been pretty consistent throughout the season, and he starts off in the number 7 position for car number 7, and alongside him, Cody Kinsey, he's trying to have a solid run here tonight. He starts off in 8th.
Back to row number 5, the edge of the top 10, the 42 of Christopher Bishop will line up the inside of that 5th row, and Daytona winner Ken MacArthur looking for some short track success. He'll start tonight from 10.
Eric Schaefer, he starts in the 11th position for that 22 machine. Alongside him, Brandon T. Banks, trying to see if he can score a top 10 finish here tonight.
Back to row number 7 in your top 14, Tyler Murray, league owner, will line himself in the 8 machine in 13th with Michael Newbraw on his outside in row number 7. We'll take a look at the rest of the field as they stand. AJ Green, Ryan Steenbachers will line up your row 8. Tristan Bailey, Michael Woolley will finalize the drivers through row number 18. Then it'll be Lance Hill, Ricky Rosner, Pete Bruni, and Brandon Gillis, the final drivers in this full 22 car field for a total of 11 rows. Let's take a look at the weather before we go green here for Myrtle Beach Speedway. An air temp of about 66 degrees, so rather cool, although we're at the edge of the summer, getting close to the fall over here in Sim. Winds about to the northwest at about 7 miles per hour. It's a partly cloudy evening and the lights are on, so we are going to have a fabulous night of racing. A total of 107.6 miles, 200 laps to start this event here for the 4Wide Racing ARCA Series. Francisco, before we go green shortly, your thoughts? What are the keys to get a race win, not only at a track like this at Myrtle Beach Speedway, but to get a win in short track fashion like we've seen a couple times throughout this series so far?
Patience, a lot of patience, and just trying to manage all the cautions, everything that gets thrown your way. It's going to be a long night for these guys, and of course, like I mentioned, patience, because it is very important. And as the pace car dips into pit road, our field a little bit strung out in the back. Right now, Harcum is going to lead them to the green flag, and the green is out. We're underway. See a good start there for your outside pole sitter, the 45 Denson. He actually gets ahead of Harcum at this first lap, and he leads lap number 1. You can see everybody going single file immediately. Charlie down to that second position. You see a little bit further back, one car way up against the wall, unable to really see who that was. But at least, we have a caution on the racetrack, wreck on the back straightaway.
Caution flag waves for the first time tonight. Field will come to a slow stall. It was drivers near the rear of the field, I believe. They got caught up in this one. Most notably, I believe Michael Newbraw might have had a hand in this incident. As we finally come to rest, lap number 3 of 200. Maybe the sign of what we're going to see here tonight from the Myrtle Beach Speedway. We'll try to find out exactly what happened near the rear of the field. We'll take a look at the replay. They were about 3 wide, but it was Michael Woolley on the inside of the racetrack. Not sure whether he lost it or whether he had some help. And just tried to dive it in too deep, Francisco, and then got loose. Tried to make sure he didn't hit the car on the outside, and luckily able to lend it off to a rest right where those little bumps are on the inside of turn 2. No damage to his car, but of course that does bring out the yellow flag. He'll be starting from the rear of the field.
Yeah, that was towards the very last couple of positions out on the racetrack. Very aggressive for lap 2, I might say. He slid across those bumps, tried to keep it going. I'm pretty sure that was an iRacing caution. So Adams did not throw this one in particular, as he kept it off the wall, was able to keep it pointed in the right direction. You feel like if this were admin yellows, that probably could have stayed green flag. But that is iRacing throwing the yellow flag, noticing a car very slow sitting on the racetrack, so they want to be cautionary, and they threw the yellow flag out. Not much racing that we got in right there, so there's not much we can really grasp out of that, except for the start that the 45 was able to get over the 46 and take the lead.
And Jacob Denson got a really good jump off the blocks, went into turn 1, got the lead immediately from the 46 of Harcum, and I guess sort of the aggressiveness paid off for the driver of the 45, one that did finish well in the top 5 at Darlington last week, so just trying to keep on to the momentum that he built over from the lady in black. The track too tough to tame, and already in a good spot, as I believe we're going to get the 1 to green signal this time by. I think the only thing, Francisco, apart from the start with Jacob Denson and Charlie Harcum to mention, was the fact that everybody went single file. A lot of these guys were looking to just start this off rather cleanly. They know how dangerous Myrtle Beach is as a racetrack in real life and in the sim, and they don't want to get too aggressive. They don't want to push it too early and get up in a crash, get with damage, especially in the first opening laps of this race. I think we're probably going to see that happen through most of this event. Drivers eager to get single file and drivers eager to be as clean as possible. Pace car will make its way back down to the safety of pit road. It'll again be the 45 and the 46. This time switched around on the front row, back to the green flag off turn 4. And as of lap number 7, we're back underway from Myrtle Beach.
A good launch there for Denson. Going back to what you were talking about there just before the green, Kenneth, they want to get single file because there's not that many people here that have experience on this racetrack, especially with probably these race cars. So they're learning this racetrack probably for the first time in some cases as they race. Some of them bought the track today, so limited experience around this entire field. So we're going to see probably different people maybe that have more experience at this racetrack start to move their way up as they are used to this racetrack and might be able to put some of that experience into use early. But I think by the end of the night, we might see some of our usual contenders start working their way back up through the field once they get some laps in. It looks like there, a little bit of a moment there for Kelly. He may have gotten the wall. And we see actually right now Harcum trying to see if he can put some pressure on Denson, trying to see if he can take the lead back. We're unable to get to the inside. You see Reedy and Kelly squabbling there for position. Reedy able to get up into third. So far, single file train around the bottom. We see a little bit of double wide a little bit further back in the traffic, but that's going to be used to it all night. A little bit of contact there, but we're going to see this all night, Kenneth.
It gets very close to the track like Myrtle Beach, and when you're at a short track like this with not as much banking in either corner, you're probably going to give way to a lot of the contact that happens around this venue. You see Cody Kinsey, he's trapped up top, was side by side with AJ Green for a moment, but then came Lance Hill, then came now the 2 of Tristan Bailey. His Texaco machine works to the inside. Now Kinsey's going to fall just outside of the top 10 and maybe give way for the 42 of Christopher Bishop, who may be on his way around as well. You could see merely the trend that happens here at Myrtle Beach. Everybody wants to stick to the bottom, but it can get very dangerous in many of these corners. And you mentioned at the top of the show, Francisco, that entrance to turn 1. It's a very interesting part of the track because not only are you trying to make sure you get into the corner safely, get onto the brakes as hard as you can, get on the binders, but you also have to arc the car in the right way because you're already turning pretty sharply left on the front straightaway right about here where this curve happens, and then you have to make sure you get wide enough for the arc, get the momentum in each corner, and then try to launch out of turn 2, set yourself up for 3 and 4.
Yeah, you don't want to enter right on the bottom into turn 1. If you notice there, you kind of want to enter at least half the lane up. No lower than that. We'll see right here, we're on board with Reedy. We'll see where he enters and where Harcum enters. Reedy's going to enter right above that white dotted line. He's going to turn down, not quite get to those little curves. You see actually a little bit further back at 71 had a moment. He's probably going to lose a position there as he has a car to his inside, unable to make that work. It looks like that is... I want to say that it looks like it's a 00. He gets on the wall there. So that's actually Jesse Freeze. It's a different iRacing paint on his car than the one he has listed. We see a car exiting pit road actually there rejoining the racetrack on the back straightaway. I'm not sure entirely who it is. That's a 79. He's a couple laps down. I'm not sure if it was a late register or what may have happened here, but he was exiting pit road just now.
And just came out of pit road. That was the 79 of Ryan Steenbacher, so I'm not sure whether he had an incident that did not constitute in a yellow flag or whether he was just going down for some service maybe earlier on, an unscheduled pit stop perhaps for the driver of the 79. He's already about 7 laps down on the racetrack, and that's something that we'll see be potent as a dangerous factor to fall behind in this field, quite frankly, in a race like this with the track so short, about half a mile. The only other tracks you could probably compare it to that we visit are probably either Martinsville, which we visited before in 4-wide racing competition, or we talked about the world's fastest half mile, Bristol Motor Speedway, that we visited not too long ago in this very series. So it's a very disastrous situation if it gets you there, if it bites you a couple laps down. We'll just have to see, but so far, Steenbacher's is the only one a victim of this. Nice battle here behind for the top 7. That's league owner Tyler Murray trying to make himself work around the 13 of Craig Longsager. He's able to make that move for 7th. And Murray, Francisco, we talked about him last week, a driver who struggled merely at the Darlington Raceway. Did not really have a good handful of his car. Was very loose around the racetrack, didn't quite get grasp of just how quickly he can make that race car go. But tonight seems to be more in his element on this short track and doing fairly well in the top 10.
I don't know how much he struggled last week. I wasn't present. I could imagine everybody was struggling at that racetrack. Darlington, very tough to drive, especially with that wall proximity that they brought in. It's very loose to try and keep these cars under your control. Oh, we actually have Gillis around on the back straight. Oh, he gets T-boned by Pete Bruni and he gets hit into the air.
And caution flag waves for the second time. Gillis is going to tow it immediately to pit road. And Pete Bruni is going to have to try and limp to the entrance with a destroyed front end on a Dale Jr. throwback that we saw presented to us last week at Darlington. And a very big hit for the driver of the 08. A big smash for both drivers indeed. We'll try to look at Brandon Gillis and see exactly how this happened. You saw it pretty much off the corner of your eye. In a turn
right
2,
there.
it was a tap right there by, I believe that was the 30 or the 33 machine, or one of the drivers there. Actually, we'll try to take a look and see exactly who that was. Actually, that was the 22. That was Schaefer that got into the 9. Gillis tries to chase it down the track, and Pete Bruni, he has nowhere to go in some sort of reaction, trying to make evasive maneuvers. But as you ride on board here, this is going to get very ugly.
Yeah, 22, very early in the race. I don't know why. I think he was trying to maybe move the 9 out of the way. Maybe he thought it was faster. But the 9 should have definitely held his brakes there. He had that car under control, just was slow. He should have locked it down, keep it up there, and maybe Pete Bruni would still have a clean race car for this race. But he probably thought he was going to have it best happen if he were to accelerate and try to save the car that way, turn it back right, and not have to stop the race car. But, you know, that's in hindsight. I'm not in the race car. Maybe he saw something different that I didn't.
We saw a couple drivers hit pit road. That was the 56 of Newbraw, the 7 of Tony Kivet. They have decided to make maybe some fuel tire calls here early on in this race. Only on lap number 23, so I'm not sure whether this was a setup for an alternate call later on, but we'll just have to monitor exactly what happened. Saw a couple other drivers also chase down the pit lane. That does include the 69 of Michael Woolley. And of course, we mentioned the 08 limped to pit road with that damage. And as for Brandon Gillis, he has towed it. He is out of this race, so unfortunately, Gillis are going to suffer a DNF at the end of tonight's coverage from the Myrtle Beach Speedway. Just a reminder that if you want to join the conversation with us up in the KBueno booth, well, you can do so by using hashtag AskKBueno. You can put any question followed by that hashtag and have your question answered on the broadcast. We'll try to answer it as quickly as we can and to the best of our abilities. That's hashtag AskKBueno for anything you want to know. Well, frankly, I think it's been a nice run, Francisco, for the 11. Austin Reedy, we saw him chase the field in that last run, and he has now moved up to second. He's going to line up the outside of row 1, or I believe just right behind the 45 when we go back to green flag racing. A nice job out of the 11, who we've known as a short track king, trying to make his name known back again on lap 25 and try to get back in the first quarter of this race.
Yeah, Austin Reedy was all over the back of that 45 just before we got that caution. And Reedy, he has ran good at the short tracks this season, hasn't gotten that win. We saw him competitive at Iowa. We saw him competitive at Bristol, competitive at Phoenix. Can he be competitive here tonight? So far, yes. but can he capture the win? That's what's going to matter to him. The green flag is out. The 45 gets going well. Once again, looks like Reedy's going to be able to hang on to that second position. A big dive behind him by Kelly, but he's unable to do anything with it. And Reedy with a run on the outside. He's going to get to the outside of the 45. Charging into the corner goes Denson, trying to see if he can hold the inside line. Works side by side for the lead. Denson trying to slide up, unable to get clear. Reedy hanging tough.
And everybody's absolutely getting to the 71, trying to dive as much as he can, but it's all about Austin Reedy, who attempted the outside movement 1 and 2. Gonna get clear this time by and stay in second, but he definitely let Jacob Denson know, hey, I'm here and I'm not willing to play around. As they're side by side behind Jesse Priest, Curtis Kelly, and he gets turned on the front straightaway. Murray involved. Lounsauger gets hit as well, and caution flag waves. It is a mess at the entrance of turn 1.
And he caught some air there again, Kenneth. That's second car tonight we've seen capture some air on a wreck. It looks like he has the, well, I was about to say it looks like he may have had his bumpers intact at the very least, but that rear bumper's gone. Well, I guess the good thing is that he doesn't have any tires off this race car. It shouldn't take too much time, but probably some required repairs are coming out of this. Let's see if we can get a second look. It looked like he tried to slide up in front of Kelly. Kelly was struggling on this restart. I think Jesse thought he may have had him clear, and that run on the outside that outside car gets was a little bit of line. You see right there, a little bit of contact maybe. Right here off the corner, gets loose. 71 turns down a little bit and gets into that right rear. Oh, and a big hit with Craig Lounsauger there to his rear bumper.
Yeah, big slam right there. You'll see everybody involved, and Priest actually got loose, and then the 71. I think he also, the 71 tried to keep it off the outside wall. A lot of these guys got very close, and Curtis Kelly, I guess in this case, tried to keep it off or maybe bounce off the wall. You see the 48 get into him. You see the 13. I think we're going to have to take an onboard look at the 13's camera, because this is something, a sight to behold here for Myrtle Beach. Right on board, they collect in front of him. There's not much time to react, and that is significant damage to the 13. You see Kelly get hit as well. Tristan Bailey gets some significant damage out of this as also. And a big stack up, our biggest wreck so far tonight from Myrtle Beach, comes at the first 30 laps of this race. And of course, many drivers already, Francisco, electing to hit pit road for the damage control. Lounsauger are going to be one of them. No use of the fast repair, but for all these guys, they've got their battle scars fairly early in this race.
You can go back a second and look at that replay once again from Kelly's perspective. It looked like there was some netcode there as well. I was able to pick that out right at the closing replays there that we were able to see. I believe there might have been some minor netcode between him and Jesse Priest that ultimately is what finished off that 0-0 and sent him spinning on that front straightaway.
We'll try to see there. You see Curtis Kelly, who is attempting to limp back on the track. Take one more look at it as coming back here, coming off the final corner, and right there, it tapped him a little bit. But even then, even if it was these two getting netcoded together, I mean, Kelly was on his way. Kelly was on his way to hit anyway to that rear, because he was trying to keep it off the outside wall. And you can sort of see a parallel in situation here. You see Priest get very loose on the throttle. 71 does it, but it's a lot later than expected. So he tries to catch the car there, and then he gets in. You see AJ Green with damage. Tristan Bailey trying to slow down, nowhere to go. Same deal for the 42 of Bishop. And it's a lot of drivers that have been collected in this one early on. Not enough, I believe, to take any drivers significantly out of this race apart from Priest. We may have to burn that fast repair, and he's going to start near the rear of the field. But as for everybody else, it is some sort of damage. Luckily enough here at Myrtle Beach at a short track, it's not going to affect you too much. But I figure earlier on in this race, you don't want to have the statement, I've got damage early on, now I have to deal with it for the rest of the time throughout. We'll double them up here. It'll be Jacob Denson, Austin Reedy on your front row. Charlie Harcum and AJ Green will line up the drivers back through row number 2. Pace car makes its way off and away to pit road. And the 45 will be on his way. We'll see if the 11 gets a better jump. Not going to catch the 45's grip this time. Back under green from Myrtle Beach as they reach back to turn 1.
A good launch for the 45, but Reed's not going to give up. It looks like into turn 1, he charged very nice and hard in there, but he's going to try and see if he can stick to that rear bumper, the 45. Further back there, AJ Green making a move for that third place position, dives it into turn number 3. And he's going to try and get a Harcum, and he will clear the 46 off the corner. Harcum getting now challenged by Tristan Bailey. Bailey sideways into turn 1, and around he's going to go.
The 2 of Bailey around on the racetrack, and again, caution flag will wave. And the Texaco Chevrolet just to an absolute halt on the outside wall in turn number 2. And it was the dive to the first corner that really set him off here. I think similar to what we saw the first yellow with Michael Woolley, who got loose on his own, trying to make an inside line stick. And unfortunately for the driver of the 2, he will lose all the track position that he gained and a little bit more. You see the onboard camera trying to make the inside line work. Gonna try to get to the 46's inside here. Francisco dive onto the brakes. Car steps out. He's into a passenger slide.
Yeah, I ran some laps here with this racetrack, trying to see what it was like, and also in preparation for our production here. And there was actually a car in the grass that same time by. I noticed somebody was in the grass just on that shot there, further in the back. Oh yeah, look, it looks like Lonsdottir maybe?
It was Ken MacArthur, actually, the 97 that got way out of shape.
Oh,
and I guess you can call this 2 instances of a yellow flag here. Francisco, 97 gets loose, hits the inside wall. This would not cause the yellow up until here.
Oh my. Wow, that was a big hit.
Take one more look at it as the 97 crosses back across the racing surface, and there goes Steenbacher, who we saw pitted a little bit earlier, went down about 7 laps or so to start this race. And now he's going to be in severe dismay here as the caution flag waves yet again. And I think in some way, Francisco, this is typical of short track racing. You're going to have drivers be very aggressive. You're going to have drivers inevitably make contact at some point. I don't think it was going to be the expectation that we had, that we were going to have this many cautions in the first 38 laps. But at the same time, it's not like we didn't have this somewhat in mind as a short track race, that we're going to have some sort of mess, some sort of chaos, and a driver makes a mistake and the field's all around him. There's not much space to navigate around this venue.
I feel like that's the expectation going into short tracks. You don't expect to go and have severely long runs. I think the standard for a long run here tonight was probably going to be somewhere in that 30-40 lap range. Other than that, I think everybody thought it was probably going to be 10-lap run caution, 10-lap run caution, and so far hasn't exactly been far from the truth, but it's been less than that. It's been about 5 laps and then caution in some cases right on the restart. There's still 162 laps to go, so we still have a ways to go for this to change. Right now, our best bet is to hope that Jacob Denson does have some Miller High Life on him, because I could go for some at this rate.
I think we may end up for that at the end of 200 laps. If we can find somewhere in at least South Carolina, not North Carolina, but South Carolina to do it, then I guess we would by the end of tonight's coverage, as we'll double them up once more. Lights are off on the iRacing official pace sedan. So again, we will have a restart involving Jacob Denson and Austin Reedy as your front 2. Ever since they've taken the first 2 positions away, they have been unstoppable, and the yellows have only frozen them up to this very point. The pace car will come off, make the sharp left. AJ Green, Charlie Harcum will remain in row number 2. It'll be Cody Kinsey and Michael Woolley, though, will line up doubled behind them. Back to P number 6. Pace car again is off, safe in a pit road. 45 gonna look for the early jump. He'll almost about get it. Clear the 11 going into the first corner, and we're back under green.
Reedy aggressive though. Big charge going into turn 1. A power move around the outside. Is he gonna get him off the corner? Yes, he will.
And Austin Reedy moves to the race lead. We saw the outside move a couple of restarts ago, and absolutely charges on Charlie Harcum, or actually Jacob Denson in the 45, as they tangle along for second and third. Here comes AJ Green to the inside.
Keep in mind, this top 3 or 4, they're on the oldest tires on the racetrack. Big damage to the 48 as the yellow flag is waving once again a little bit further back. Big crash.
And it's another big stack up this time. The 13 of Lonsdottir gets collected in this again. The 88 of Brendan Banks. Well, he's not going to get hit by the pace car to act extra damage, but Brendan Banks is going to come back out of the racetrack. And again, the caution flag will wave. So another big stack up here in turn 1. And it did not actually start with the driver of the 88. Happened a little bit further up the road. I think you might have to look for the 13 here in this case to see it happen first. And again, Francisco, Tristan Bailey gets loose by himself at the entrance to turn 1. But instead of being the only car in an incident being spun around in the first 2 corners, he collects not only Lonsdottir, but Banks and a couple others as well.
Yeah, I was getting ready to make this point on the last caution, that one of the things I experienced while driving here is that braking for turn one is a lot more treacherous than you could imagine. It doesn't matter what brake bias you're running. I was running 70 brake bias. If you brake too late for these corners, considering you're already turning going into it, the car's going to spin. It'll just spin on you, and you cannot save it. It's just very hard to drive hard into turn one. You have to back it off nice and easy, and then you'll feel that the car is way too slow, that you can push more, but then you try and do that, and the result's this. So there's a fine line there in turn one for some of these guys, and it's very hard to find. As previously mentioned at the top of the broadcast, for some of these people, it is their first couple laps at this racetrack, and considering we've had a lot of caution flags, they probably haven't exactly learned a lot of what they can or can't do under the green flag conditions.
And that's a good point, because we're probably going to carry this over into Five Flags, right? I know Five Flags is probably more often run in the sim with these kind of cars than Myrtle Beach, but at least in the case of Five Flags over in Pensacola in the sim, we're going to see the same scenario. We're probably going to have the drivers who are coming into this race, like you mentioned, and not knowing exactly what this track is all about, how this track and car combo quite possibly works behind the wheel. So most of the time in the race or just before the race in practice, these are their first laps around other cars and in this sort of track state. And it's sort of a big learning curve for these guys as they try to make their way around this track and do it cleanly. In fact, we've seen Tristan Bailey try to push the limits. That could possibly be in the learning curve, trying to put as much as you can into the first corner. And he's already learned now twice that he can't dive it in too deep. He can't get the wrong angle, or else he's going to go around with the setup that he has on his race car. So it could pose possibly some notes taken for not only Bailey, but a lot of the other drivers in this field. As you can see, many of them single file right now. I believe we're going to get one to green this time by, but many of them were single file due to damage control. Many of them hitting pit road this time, as Reedy will take the lead on the restart. First time he leads this race. He'll be alongside the 45, Jacob Denson, who had been controlling this race since lap 1.
You'd think with how much the outside has gotten better launches that the leader would choose the outside. We've seen a couple restarts now where the outside's gotten the better launch, so I'm interested in seeing if at any point tonight anybody goes with that outside line. Reedy doesn't, but he's going to accelerate in the corner, and he gets a great restart. He's going to be way out in front, and it looks like Charlie Harcum is going to take over that second spot going into turn one.
Pole sitter Charlie Harcum, bring him back into the conversation. He moves to the inside of the 45 and takes over second. How about Tyler Murray shifting his way to third? He's going to keep the position as the yellow flag waves once more. And we'll look for anybody involved, and I believe we may have had Lance Hill collected in the incident. He has ever since taken his way to the garage. I believe he is out of this race for good. We'll try to see whether it happened. Indeed it was the driver of the 34. So a single car incident this time to bring us under yellow flag conditions. I believe this was pretty much the first handful of corners coming to the green flag. You see Tony Kivitt. He's on the inside. He gets past, and much like Bailey's situation, Francisco was just a little bit too hard on the brakes. The angle not correct, and around he goes.
Yeah, it's tough for these guys. You see all the way to the right, and there's just no catching it. That's the exact same thing I faced when learning this racetrack when I bought it. I raced with the Xfinity car, not with the ARCA car, but it was the same deal. You brake too late for turn one, and that's what's going to happen. These guys are not running too low brake bias. Believe me, that is the nature of turn one at this racetrack.
It's such a very tight corner. It's such a very hard corner to master. And I think if we're going to talk more about the characteristics of this Myrtle Beach Speedway, you have to look at the opposite ends. We talked about the entrance to turn one, how tough that is. But we also have to look at the arc that you take into turn one as well, because we've seen a lot of drivers. They're about half a lane up. They're not all the way down to the inside up until maybe the final parts of turn two, to get the maximum speed off of the corner and go to the back straightaway, and turn 3 and 4 have a head of steam. You're not going to see a lot of drivers get very close to those bumps because they don't want to hit them. They can damage the car easily. They can kill your momentum in a matter of seconds. So you have to make sure you kind of sway through that corner right. But then in 3 and 4, you have a completely opposite problem. You can't really run the outside that much. It's better to hug that white line on the bottom. But you can't hug it too tightly because you can make a mistake. The wall comes up. There's no runoff on the apron there in turns 3 and 4. So if you're going to go sideways, you're going to hit either wall or the drivers in between those walls on the racetrack. So it's such a very tough situation to handle. It's such a very tough part of the track to master. And I think what we're seeing the fruits of the labor here for many of the drivers, Francisco, that they're just trying their best, but this racetrack
the way through this race. And of course, like I mentioned in the last caution, that the more caution laps you run here, it's actually negative for these drivers. They're not able to learn as much as they probably would want to in the racing conditions. But that ties back to the lack of experience on this racetrack to begin with. It's not a track that's typically run for most of these guys, really. I mean, it probably is with these cars, but I mean, this track was probably ran more with I don't know, super late models maybe.
Yeah, super late models, street stocks. I know this was ran for, I believe, the replacements when many NASCAR drivers, many real-world NASCAR personalities took this racetrack with street stocks. You got to think modifieds as well, but it's all the ARCA cars as Murray goes around at the exit of turn 4. And immediately as we get the restart, the caution flag waves, and we can already see who it's by.
Yeah, that's part of the old tires. Some of these people have been here on old tires, and continuous cautions just cools them down even more. It's to the point where it's on the probably very low, close to ambient temperature on most rig tires. So you try to demand the power. All of a sudden, when you see the leader going, and it just won't go right there. Just on the throttle, gets into high revs, and around the car goes. Fortunately, a light tap in the wall, so not really any serious damage, and it allowed the car to correct itself, and nobody really ran into it. So right there, just immediately kisses the wall. Doesn't really hit it with the back end, but he's able to straighten it out quickly with that little tap. Oh, we have a little bit of contact under yellow right there.
Yeah, guys stacking up. I believe they're trying to find the pace car here. It's come under wraps, but the 8 machine to Murray, he's going to stop on pit road. Don't believe he's going to take the fast repair. Just going to take some optional damage here for the strikes he had on the inside wall. But interestingly enough, we saw him reach the top of first gear, and he didn't have the problem there. It was just the transition to low rev second gear that he shifted quite early from first to second, and then the car kind of just stepped out. It kind of hopped just a little bit and then got very loose, and immediately there was no chance to save it. And then around everybody went to try and scramble to get away from the 8 machine who went spinning right about there at that red line at the exit of turn number 4. Luckily enough, nobody gets some damage from this apart from Murray, although Murray just gets minimal damage in this case, so he's going to be able to continue, and pretty much everybody else in this race maintains themselves clean from this situation. It's an interesting mix, Francisco, between the single car incidents that we're having, whether they're single car spins or multi-car collections. I think we're having a bit of both. We're not having the middle. We're having either one or the other.
A lot of it inexperience. That's really what it's coming down to. We say it a lot, but that's precisely what's going on here. Just not a lot of track time here at all, and coupled with this specific race car, it was probably bound to happen if you think about it. It's not like our other racetracks that you go to and, oh yeah, I've run there many times. I have a lot of experience there, and you're kind of able to adjust for it. But kind of to go off topic here in the conversation. Speaking of lack of experience, this past weekend, if for those that maybe